So the initial grant ended on February 29th. Which means every activity that we committed to under that first year planning grant was complete. What that also means is that we are just getting a bunch of the reports and information from those first year activities. So over the next month, we plan on distilling and going through those to pull out any recommendations, discuss plans for dissemination, how we want to distribute those findings to folks here and elsewhere. So a number of the outputs from the initial grant, we expect to start rolling out this month and then continuing to do that in April. Again, just given the volume of what was produced, it'll take us a little bit of time to go through everything, but we're really excited to be able to start sharing that information. We're excited. As of Monday, our statewide strategic plan, so the document that is available on the table and has been shared numerous times, was formally accepted by the Administration for Children and Families on Monday. What that means is every activity marked with a Colorado state flag, which is funded by the Preschool Development Grant, can now officially begin. So we're a little bit behind. That's okay, because again, we were wrapping up that initial grant. So this month, we'll really start building some infrastructure, putting out contracts, hiring staff, doing everything we need to be able to launch those new activities. I think for many folks, it feels like we've been doing this so long that we should be able to jump into everything right away. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We still need to staff up, so we'll be looking at hiring an additional 12 staff and then putting out about 20 or so new contracts to begin that work. So a lot of the activities that were identified within the strategic plan and the application won't officially start until closer to that June-July timeframe. The one thing we're still waiting on federal approval of is the program performance evaluation plan. They do have expectations that the evaluation work starts in July, so we're quickly trying to get that approved by our federal partners so that we can then bring on a contractor or vendor to support that work. The office has also been busy distributing the new needs assessment and strategic plan. So these documents were officially released early February during the ECLC's annual report event. And since that time, our office has been out to communities, including Pueblo, Grand Junction, and Fort Collins, to share these with local partners. And we also did a statewide webinar. That webinar is available on the Colorado Shines Brighter website, and we can share that as well. If you have partners or if you're convening and you would like somebody to come to your group and talk about these documents, just reach out to the PDG team, and we'd be happy to participate in the meeting and just really go in depth on some of these strategies. And as I noted before, we're finally launching our renewal activities. So one thing we discussed last week, or 2 months ago, wow, time flies. We discussed was the role of the PQA subcommittee in this work and how we hope to continue to partner with this group. So moving forward, PQA and the ECLC will continue to serve as the advisory body for the PDG grant. So as you're thinking about, and I should have brought up a copy of the strategic plan, maybe I'll take a step back. So the new strategic plan document, can I steal your at a glance, actually?
Oh, yes.
Does require a little bit of orientation, so we changed up the icons a bit. So anything that has the Colorado state flag in front of it is something that was included in the PDG renewal grant and is fully resourced by the PDG grant itself. Those are activities that we know over the next 3 years will definitely happen because we have the resources and we made the commitment to do that work. The activities that have the friends shaking hands, which I know is not in vogue right now, given coronavirus, we should have done a little elbow bump. So these are the activities that we're still looking for partners to champion. So these are strategies that lie outside of PDG. The OEC is not laying claim to these. So again, we need some partners to help us take those strategies on. So as we think of the role of the PQA in terms of an advisory body, we certainly want them to continue to stay engaged in those PDG-funded activities. And as we go through the next 3 years, as we focus on continuous quality improvement, as we share findings from evaluation, continue to guide how we use those investments from PDG, how we course correct if needed, or how we can maybe perhaps expand some of those activities, again, over the next 3 years. We also want to lean on the PQA to continue to involve stakeholders, especially as we identify champions for those other activities, and then as the office continues to invest in the needs assessment and strategic planning work. By the end of the project period, we are expected to have a refresh of the needs assessment that we completed in 2019. So that's going to require, again, some extensive outreach and engagement of not only families, but providers and other partners to inform the needs and opportunities for the state. And then finally, and I believe this is the next agenda item, is the discussion of perhaps forming an advisory or task group that can help us implement fully the Colorado strategic plan. So again, it's really important to note that PDG, while those strategies are embedded in the statewide strategic plan, the strategic plan is not just PDG, and it's not owned by the Office of Early Childhood. It really is meant to be owned by the state as a whole. The ECLC endorsed it. There's a commitment there to help find additional partners to take on those 21 strategies that the office and that PDG will not be able to resource or support. So within that task group, there's a couple of things that I think would be helpful to consider, and that's really clarifying the vision and outcomes for the 21 strategies that are not captured under PDG. What does done look like for that work? We also want to use a task group or an advisory group to think about how we track and monitor progress against that statewide strategic plan. Again, PDG, we have the evaluation plan in place, or will soon. We really have a clear vision for those activities. It's those other ones that were written a little more broadly, that have room for other partners to kind of come in and define, that we might need some support on. And then finally, going back to what I said earlier, as these strategies evolve, as Colorado's landscape changes, having a place where we can have some in-depth discussions about changes to that statewide strategic plan. So any questions before I move on to kind of a one-off and then we go into that conversation? Anything online? All right. So one thing I do want to share is now that we've really solidified the work under Preschool Development Grant, as well as the action plan under Senate Bill 63, as requested a few months ago, the office did complete a crosswalk document. And again, I left that at the table. Heather, I don't know if you want to, or Christina, thank you. So the office created this crosswalk that takes the recommendations from Senate Bill 63 and identifies the ones that have been captured under the Preschool Development Grant, so those strategies that we know we're going to pursue. This crosswalk also includes pending initiatives, so thinking about the governor's budget or pending legislation that would also address these recommendations. It's important to note this crosswalk is not complete. So we have not yet captured things happening at the local level. We do know that our early childhood councils and some other partners are doing really great work at the local level. That's not here. There's also some ongoing work by the Office of Early Childhood that sits outside of PDG, outside of new funding sources. That as well has not yet been captured. So it's really honed in on the Preschool Development Grant. So we'll continue to provide updates on this document so folks can continue to track where things are at. We'll also start thinking about how we perhaps elevate things that are happening at the local level to continue to plug into here. So this is a little fresh, so we're still kind of defining how we want to use this crosswalk. Questions on that? Lindsay?
Sorry, I have a question on this plan. You mentioned they're going to bring on 12 staff. Is that all in Office of Early Childhood?
It is. A question for both of us. Yep, so the question was whether the 12 staff would fit within the Office of Early Childhood. So yes, those are state FTE. That does not capture staff that were employed during the first grant period. So we hired 7 FTE during the initial grant to really help with the planning and administration. We'll be hiring 12 in addition. The 12 new staff really are an expansion of our capacity. So what we're thinking with those staff are hiring instructional design specialists that can help with the creation of new PDIS courses. We'll be hiring 2 project coordinators or business analysts that will help with the IT roadmap implementation. We're also looking at a full-time evaluation manager, given the heavy lift of that work. And then we're also doing a coaching pilot within the grant, so that accounts for 5 of those FTEs.
And actually, you mentioned the IT roadmap. Has that been released yet?
So that is all on me, and no. So I will commit to putting that online today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yep. Follow up to the family question. So is there some type of more detailed map? So this is very helpful and I really appreciate it. But is there like, okay, this one's going to be considered like this, and we're going to go this way? I don't have a roadmap.
So is there a roadmap for the strategic plan? So we're developing that. So for the strategies that are going to be managed under the preschool development grant, we're still working out, excuse me, some of the details on how that looks. We know we're not going to hit all, I think there's 36 strategies in there in the first year. There's a little bit of timing. So one good example would be around some of the transitions work. We have one strategy really focused on creating tools and resources, another on a roadmap. For us, it likely makes sense for us to complete that roadmap activity and have a good understanding of the landscape before we move into the creation of tools and resources. So our internal team has committed to really map out the details of all those strategies by March 31. And then we'll be able to start sharing what some of that looks like. So what really is a year 1 deliverable versus what's going to happen in 2021 or 2022.
And by who?
Yeah, so we can outline partners. I would say largely the strategies are owned by the Office of Early Childhood. There are some that are certainly housed within the Department of Education. And then we are mapping along those external partners who will be central to supporting those activities. So we'll have a good understanding of that. And then we can kind of put out like a table or chart that helps detail some of that work. Yeah, but we won't probably be able to share that until April, just because March 31 is when we'll have some of those details finalized.
Question online. So just to clarify, we have 7 staff who've already been hired plus 12 additional staff funded through the PDG grant as time limited. How will those positions be funded through after PDG is over?
Yeah, so it really determines on need. So if there is a demonstrated need for those positions to continue on to help support sustainability, then of course we'll be looking at alternative funding sources, whether that's looking at other federal funding streams, if it's looking at the governor's budget. We do note that these are term limited, so the expectation of these staff coming in is that they really are here for a period of 3 years to help build structures that are going to really change the landscape of the state. But again, I think that's, something that we will start looking at in 2021 is how do we then start sustaining these activities that are not just a one-time activity.
Lindsay, a question, really a follow-up to the other 2 about the alignment of philanthropy with this, because it's out there that all this money is coming in and you'll be making grants, and it might be very important, maybe with the information in April, to share it with philanthropy, and just wondering if that's in your plans so that all of that funding can be aligned and there won't be assumptions that philanthropic dollars aren't as needed.
Yeah, so we actually, as an office, were having a conversation about that last week, knowing that there's a lot of money flowing through philanthropy to providers, especially in terms of looking at like microgrants and other supports. And so as an office, what we're hoping to do is work with the funder community to start mapping these out and detailing so that we all have a good sense of what everybody's doing and we're not duplicating and we're really understanding where we can perhaps invest other resources.
Great.
Well, I think with that, then oh, shoot, yes. And like dual
agendaing here. So there's also a Senate Bill 63 Communications Toolkit. So thanks to Scott and generous support through the National Governors Association 0 to 3 Technical Assistance Grant, we were able to create one-pagers in the social media toolkit that also shares recommendations from Senate Bill 63. We did target 3 audiences, and they're available in English and Spanish, and so you'll find materials that are family-facing, provider-facing, as well as advocate or policymaker-facing. There will be an email going out next week with a little more detail as well as links to all of these. I believe, Leslie, are they currently on the website? So they're currently on the Office of Early Childhood website, and then hard copies of the one-pagers are also available on the tables with the other meeting materials. All right. All good? Lindsay? Yes, thank you. All right. Good morning, everybody. Okay. So I'm Christina. We want to do introductions.
No, we didn't. Sorry, that's my fault.
That's okay. Why don't we do introductions really quick? Are you able to read folks? Sure. Okay. All right, we'll go in the room first. If we can just go around the room and do introductions really quick, and then we'll read folks' names who are online. Letty, you want to start?
Yes, Letty Batts, formerly Chambers Fund, now consulting.
I'm Lily Esposeth. I'm with Office of Early Childhood. Hi, Heather Circula, Office of Early Childhood. Jackie Sorrento, mine is Emily Cook, Denver Early Childhood Council. Karen Snyder, Health and Childcare, Colorado. Scott Prohibiting, Office of Governor, Colorado. Erica Newton, right here for the Colorado Area. With Healthcare Policy Sciences. Liz German, USA Ability to Colorado, Colorado. Johnson, Colorado State Library. Awesome. Are you ready? Okay. I'm Amanda Pelletier with the Early Childhood Leadership Commission, and we have online Alexandra Murphy, Alicia Lumcombe Emily, Amber Bilby, Angela Scroller, Eveline Rodriguez, Bill Jager, Chris Miller, Dr. Jose Silvia, Eva Jankowski, Ida Rose, Janine Pryor, Kate Reideman, Kimberly Rhino, Laura Knudsen, Lisa Schluter, Mary Hefferman, Michelle Stewart, Morgan Jenke, Naomi Stevenson, Nicole Ryle, Patty Belquez, Paula Schaefer, Sandra Gregory, Shannon Hall, Sandra Romam, Stacy Petty, and Susan Galacos.
Awesome.
I think I got everyone.
Great. Well, thank you all again for joining us, and thanks for reading for everybody, Amanda. We wanted to take a few minutes and just talk a little bit with you about the role of program quality and alignment. So about a year ago, we restructured this group. We brought in a lot more folks to it, and it was in response to receiving that first year of PDG funds. And so at that point, we decided to utilize this group as the advisory under the Early Childhood Leadership Commission, under the ECLC. And we are really thrilled with the energy and the new folks that have come to the table and the new connections, and just sort of broadening the scope of how we think about early childhood in regards to the PDG work and beyond. So now that we have funding for 3 more years, which is really exciting, we wanted to sort of circle back to that. And like Lindsay said, we're intending to continue to utilize this group to guide the work of PDG, to bring discussions to this table, and that hopefully will continue through that work group that's digging in on some of those strategies that are not funded through the PDG funds at this time. And we wanted to talk with you all because I think we'll plan to have regular PDG updates in general at this meeting, but we know that there's a lot of things that are happening outside of PDG as well. And so, last year we were really, really PDG focused, and we wanted to bring that back to you and say, we still want to have some PDG in there, but what else do you all know of, or what else do you want to sort of think about and focus our work on together for the next year? So I want to let folks think about that for a minute, and folks online, if you want to think about that and start typing some ideas in. We have 2 working groups right now underneath the Program Quality and Alignment Group. We have our ECPD advisory, and we also have our Framework Working Group. And we have the ability to create other working groups around certain topics that may be time limited or project-based. Again, we'll probably, as Lindsay talked about, have a working group under there that's focused on those unfunded strategies right now to make sure that we're aligning and, again, reporting back up through PQA. But what else do you all want to think about and talk about and align and improve quality? Thinking back to sort of what is the structure for PQA that's going to work for you, that's going to keep you coming to these meetings and, wanting to engage and really getting some good work done. So I'd love to throw it open to just thoughts, ideas. Does that make sense? Would you prefer to really be PDG focused for the year? What do you all want to think about and work on and accomplish for the next year? And Amanda, this stuff comes in online, if you can go ahead with that. Yeah, please. And we're going to talk really loud so we can hear on the webinar. Sorry.
One of the things that our community is, we feel like the culture maybe nationwide is really thriving on for early childhood. And so we're working with partners and a federal council bar in launching a no small matter, using that as a toolkit to, if you will, build public will, a call to action. And so part of our thought process, we had a pilot, it was received extremely well. People want this in 40 different community groups. But we also want to go out with an app. What's our app of the audience group? And we feel like the time is right to come up with a common, consistent message in regards to that. So that we build this public will as we look at the vision from the governorship and from our state down the road. So we'd love to hear updates and conversation and just having opportunities for us to work together to close that. Awesome.
Will you just summarize what you said?
Sure. So to summarize that quickly for folks on the phone, with the video No Small Matter as sort of an action tool, using that in the community, the environment is so right for early childhood right now, and so how can we sort of capitalize on that and using No Small Matter as one tool, but then how are we getting people involved and what is our call to action from there? But then also thinking about common and consistent language and messaging around what we're doing in early childhood as a state, and if we can sort of coalesce around that. So awesome, thanks. What other thoughts? What other ideas do people want to learn about, talk about, connect around, collaborate? How about folks online? Anything coming in?
We have one comment. Would you be open to working to a working group focused on the needs of dual language learners, children in our state? Spring Institute already has a stakeholder coalition looking at these issues and would build in a way to inform the ECLC more. We got another one coming in. More formally, since this is such a fast-growing population of our young learners.
Did everybody in the room hear that around dual language learners? I don't think we'll make any decisions on work groups that we want to have or anything right now, but I think that's a really interesting idea. Or partnering with the Spring Institute to learn about what are they doing and share that information so we're not duplicating, but really helping to educate and connect around great work that's happening. So I think that's a really good learning opportunity for us, and then maybe from there there'd be something we could take on. So we'll note that. Thank you. there another one online?
I would like to see family support and strengthening and parent education aligned with the work, including home visitation. There was an agreement with using No Small Matters movie as PD.
So I would suggest, also maybe just hearing from the office, what is it from the plan that you want more for input on process? I'm thinking specifically about goal number 1, all about aligning and coordinating systems. And it just seems like a really good group to sort of be paying attention to that piece of work over the next 2 years. I think especially around the implementation and the evaluation. I don't know enough about it to really know, but I want to hear a little bit more from the office about how they would like this through. But I think there's definitely a lot of things in this plan that effort over the next 2 years.
Just to summarize that quickly on the phone, hearing from the Office of Early Childhood around the PDG plan, around where can the office use support, where are there opportunities to align, help with evaluation, really digging into what are the parts that this group, as such a cross-sector group, can come together and really support. So thanks, Karen. Yeah.
First off, I just want to agree with what Sharon said, especially with this large influx of staff at DHS or DG, and the rollout. This makes a lot of sense to me. Second of all, weren't we talking about a policy group?
Potentially. Yeah, nothing's been finalized yet.
Yeah. And going to some of the other comments that we've been hearing about the increased prominence of early childhood in state government policy budget might make sense to the people we're talking about the ECLC last week, have a subcommittee or
Okay. For folks on the phone, the idea of just with so much happening in the state, having a group that can think about policy and how implementation and things like that. And that did come up at the ECLC meeting too, as a need in the space. So thank you, Scott. Other thoughts, ideas? What do you want to know more about? Letty? Yeah.
I think almost every comment has focused on alignment and program quality and alignment. It's in our title. I would like to see alignment on every agenda, and it could be alignment through the framework. It can be alignment hearing what's happening with the PDG group, alignment on policy, but just an emphasis on, because there's so many things going on, this could be the place to inform and align all the efforts that are happening at the same time. It might be an opportunity. Not a working group necessarily, but an agenda item to discuss.
I won't summarize because you're right by the phone, so I'm sure folks heard you. Thank you. Other thoughts, ideas? Anything else online? Heather? Yeah.
So I do think it's important, I think, to build off of Karen's comment around if we have an opportunity specifically around the champion work within CDC to have a space where folks can come together to talk about the alignment piece, so we're not duplicating efforts in addition to learning from what's happening at the local level with this work, because my suspicion is that there are pockets of really great work happening at local levels and that we just don't always tend to hear what's happening. So I would love for us to consider the possibility of having that space, while then also the PDG in itself, the resource work behind it, and to build off and continue that energy, because by the time year 2 ends and we start looking at year 3, and that will go quickly, that sustainability plan and continue to work, because as a gentle reminder, we do have a strategic plan within 5 years. We're being funded for 3 of those years.
piggyback on Heather, so the office has been going out and talking about the strategic plan. You know, again, we have those 36 directions, have a good sense of what's happening. These get questions about the remaining 21 and how we plan to attack those. And as an office, our response really is, we don't have the authority, we don't have the bandwidth, they're important, so we're looking at you. So, when I get those questions, I don't necessarily have a place for those folks to go yet, and it's really important. And it's been incredibly clear too, as we do members of the philanthropic community, that they want to plug in. So where can their dollars support work? And so to Heather's point, being able to elevate what's working locally, I think would be a great way to connect those funders to ways to have an impact through the strategic plan, and really find champions for that effort and partnerships and alignment. Yeah.
Awesome. So to summarize that quickly for the phone, you folks were talking about creating a space where people can really talk about how are things aligning, looking at those remaining 21 strategies in particular that don't have owners yet, that the office is not moving forward, bringing in the philanthropic community to think about where they want to plug in and what strategies they might be willing to fund and how are we connecting that and aligning that to other work, and then creating space to really support and elevate the work that's happening at the local level. And so learning more about what's happening, what's working, and then carrying that to this meeting to really bring to light. Awesome. Other thoughts?
In general, I'd like to hear more about informal learning environments, and I don't just mean FFN care, although that is definitely a part of it, but I just know that there are lots of informal learning opportunities for young children that happen every day in libraries and museums all across the state, and those systems and the more formal ECE systems are not really as closely connected as they could be or should be. So if we're truly talking about no, we're on board, that's what I'm trying to say. I think we have to find some way to pull those things together a little bit more.
Thank you, Joyce. And Joyce was sharing how we can take some extra time to think about the informal learning environment, not just our FFN providers, but libraries and museums and cultural settings and other places where kids are learning, and really think about connecting that in this work.
On that, Joyce, and I think I heard it earlier too from some of the online comments, that we do have a mixed delivery system in our state, and I think it will be important for us to always think about that mixed delivery system when we are aligning, when we are thinking about funding, and do we have the appropriate representation, and if not, how can we also include? And so, yes, mixed delivery system, but then also the services that support that. So thinking of comprehensiveness, health, physical health, mental health, oral health, all of those components that support. And then even the mental health, the field that supports that work as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Really thinking about the mixed delivery system of care, but then services and connections, and going into those other areas of the framework, the different domains in there, pulling in oral health and behavioral health, and connecting to those systems, so that we are truly aligning not just our work, but how are we connecting to other systems in this. Anything else? Anything else online?
There is a comment that says we should track non-traditional preschool efforts such as outdoor schools. It is important to keep informed on those outcomes. And there is ditto to the inclusion of health.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. That was really helpful. I think, thinking about not just another meeting that you have to come to because it's on your calendar, but really how are we using this time to advance, to align, to connect, to learn from each other, and really be making an impact on the systems in our state. So we'll connect with our co-chairs and think about how can we maybe do some different structures or activities or ways to utilize our agenda to accomplish some of these. But please do continue to share with us ideas that you have, and then also just an ask. When we think about what other things are happening, what's happening at the local level, we don't always necessarily hear about that, so please do come to us with ideas or presentation ideas. We'd love to have folks calling in from around the state, so we're getting more geographic diversity in terms of what we're learning about. So please know you're always encouraged to bring ideas to share with us. We'd love to hear from all of you. All right, that is all that I have. We'll switch to Heather.
So of course I would want to make sure that we continue to talk about the workforce at PQA, and to make sure that is noted for us. So really I'm just here today to give you an update on what the Early Childhood Professional Development Advisory Group is doing, or ECPD Advisory. And we have 4 co-chairs, so I'm here as 1/4 today, in addition to Jennifer O'Brien at the Department of Education. We have Pamela Harris, who is representing Mile High Early Learning, and Rebecca Cantor, who is representing Institutes of Higher Education at the University of University of Colorado at Denver. And so our job at the ECPD Advisory, we've been tasked to ensure that we are facilitating the implementation of the Colorado Workforce 2020 Plan. And we are almost at our 2020 reconvening to see how things are going there. Next slide. Oh, I do. That's how you were like looking up here. Okay, great. Another way. Okay, so here we are. There we go. You might recall at our last PQA meeting, we talked about some priority areas that we're zooming down on. And I think I shared that we have like over 99 activities within that plan. So some of them are doing well, and we've checked the box. But at a few meetings ago, the advisory group decided to zoom in on 4 particular areas, and these are the ones that came to the top. Under the workforce goal, establishing clear, defined, shared terminology for different roles and credentials. And I'm happy to report that through our preschool development grant, we had some work groups that were facilitated by Government Performance Solutions that were helping us get to some of these pieces. And we'll have some report outs in the near future. When I say that, it could very well possibly be either at our April ECPD meeting or our June meeting. And then I think that there will be a mechanism, as Lindsay had mentioned, about some reporting tools that are going to be out on our website, determining what we've done so far with our preschool development grant year 1. Recruitment and retention goal. Exploring the relationships with early childhood councils to develop professional learning communities to share effective strategies around recruitment, retention, and improving efficacy. So one of the things that we're actually doing is we are meeting with ECLA leadership next week, actually, to discuss some next steps as we continue this planning process. Because like I've mentioned, we have we will have 5 meetings between now and the end of the year, which will wrap up that 2020 3-year planning process. Oh, goodness, right? So it goes quick, PDG, folks. And so with that, what we want to do is think about ways in which we can work better together. What does this mean at the local levels? How can ECPD advisory co-chairs and group actually help ensure that we can meet these goals here? So the next, this will wrap up our 4 goals here. In addition to that recruitment and retention piece,
identifying barriers and convening roundtables to identify solutions to successfully recruit and retain people of color in leadership roles. So we've also been reaching out within our state for folks who have a lot of experience in this work. Some of you know that Rosemary Allen does a lot of work in equity in this space, but then also we're reaching out to some other folks and trying to connect with historically HB, oh goodness, I'm gonna watch. Thank you. Can you repeat that?
HBCUs, historically black colleges.
Yes, thank you. Historically black community colleges and universities. And so thinking of ways in which we can work with them to say, hey, Colorado is this really great place to work and look at all the opportunities that we have. So more to come on that, and if anybody here has recommendations within our state or connections in other states, like we are super, we're really willing to explore options. And then a side note to this, particularly for the Head Start community, that the budget from the Office of Head Start, or our federal budget, trickling down to the Office of Head Start, has about $150 million that they are putting into HBCUs to support folks to get into the field of education in early childhood. So I don't know what that will look like quite yet, but there is some money put behind that, so we're excited. And then finally, the compensation goal of exploring relationships with early childhood councils to develop peer learning communities to share effective strategies around enhancing compensation, including wages and benefits. Again, this will be the other part of our conversations with ECLO leadership next week. And, you know, I think that we're really focusing a lot on workforce and recruitment and retention. And rarely are we talking about the compensation goal. I mean, it's big, we understand that, but if we can just tackle it little by little, I think that we'll have a lot of strategies then that we can share with each other that can support how we can best compensate our staff and what are the resources that we're using in our communities. So I'll pause there. Questions, comments, concerns, thoughts?
So even back to what I talked about in Homeowners, our goal is to talk about what to do to Medicare and education programs with lots of ways to support our youth building environment. I just think that as we're talking about this, that's my economic development.
So Jackie was sharing that we can't necessarily talk about compensation without recruitment and retention, and that they're woven together, and thinking about economic development folks, and so maybe those are also people that we can encourage to come to the table. Yeah, definitely.
We decide, the ECLC decide that
we didn't make any decisions. It came up first.
Kind of a discussion about whether it might be a subcommittee or whether
Yeah.
So Scott had asked about at the last ECLC meeting the question around ECPD advisory elevating from a work group to a subcommittee, and that is still under consideration within the ECLC. Yeah.
For compensation, are there any lessons from other states we can draw from?
Yeah, good question. I think that we are part of the transforming the workforce with the Institute of Medicine, that original group that got together about 4 years ago. There is like a cohort in which we can tap into. I think some states are using tax incentives for compensation. Other folks are supporting compensation through higher education. So ensuring that their workforce, they're paying for their workforce to go to school. However, does that get to on my paycheck? I think folks are still working on that. That's a really good point too. Also, if we're trying to do local communities of learning, we should also be just connecting back with our national friends too.
On the compensation issue, the working group that the Children's Campaign and Women's Foundation has been convening, it didn't really look at compensation specifically this past year, but it is something that we are planning, governor's office involved in as well. We are planning on addressing in the next over the next course of next year. And there are some other states that have been targeting this issue and sort of a few strategies for state parity. So it might be good to connect working group with the Children's Campaign and Women's Foundation efforts. And there are a couple of examples, like in Michigan and Maryland, particularly those two states. I heard that they're working on this issue of pay parity. So it's been on my to-do list to go back and explore that a little bit more closely. I don't know, maybe looking at what other states are doing and making examples of that.
Yes, thank you. So Scott was referring to the governor's office, the Children's Campaign, and the Women's Foundation have also convened a group, very short term, to look at some work around the workforce. And we do have representation on our ECPD advisory from that group, from the Women's Foundation. So that is a connection piece and an alignment piece that we didn't want to lose. And I mean, it would be great. I think we're trying to do this. I'm sure we can always be better at that. At this piece is, if we're talking workforce, wouldn't it be great if we could just use the ECPD advisory as the convening for all things workforce, and or being a connection up from the local communities so that we can have that commonality. We can have a shared message on workforce. And if there are things happening at the local level that we need to address, what can those be? Because my guess is, again, somebody may have already solved that in another community.
Other states.
Yeah, definitely other states, yes. And those are some strategies, too, that with some forward thinking, with the next iteration of 2020 vision and beyond for workforce, because it's not going to stop quite yet, because we'll always need workforce, is how can we bring in national partners to Colorado to talk about what's happening in other states, and then to have those connections, whether it's in Region 8, whether it's in the Mountain West, on the East Coast. To your point, Scott, states are, I mean, I don't know if anyone's solved it, but they're really working hard on trying to get to some solutions. Great. All right. Yes, great conversation, compensation. We definitely need thought partners in this work for sure. So before I go into the last slide, you can find the dates for future ECPD advisory meetings on the ECLC website under Subcommittees and Working Groups. But just for your information, our next meeting is April 7th, and our location will be at the Department of Human Services downtown. All the meetings are from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and we will have a remote option as well. June 2nd, August 4, October 6th, and December 1 are the next. That's the schedule of meetings for the rest of the year. And like I had mentioned, we will have we'll zoom in on both the workforce and the two recruitment and retention goals, along with compensation. We'll spread those out for the next 4 meetings. And then our last meeting, we don't know what that will look like quite yet, but hopefully it's the celebration of all this awesome work. And then all the pieces that we still need to work on will potentially, hopefully, go into a visioning for the future, while also thinking about workforce from our profession and then the field that supports our profession, so that mixed delivery system with home visitors, with mental health consultants, with coaches. So those are all the folks too that help support all the work that we're doing. I have a few. Oh, please. Okay.
A few comments online. We have one comment that EPIC is working on access to lower cost-free real estate for the early childhood field. Without a larger public funding source, freeing up financial resources typically spent on real estate and facilities can also contribute to paying higher wages and lowering costs for families. And then we have another comment. To build on these points from Heather and Scott, the ECE Workforce Policy Group that we are building together with this is from Bill from the Colorado Children's Campaign, building together with the Women's Foundation in the Governor's Office, has a virtual meeting at 3 p.m. on 3/18, and folks can email Bill to join. A reminder, this group is focused on state legislative and budgetary policy change. Anyone can email him at bill@coloradokids.org to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, if anyone is attending the Recommend Early Childhood Conference on the 13th, March 13th, led by an all-star team of folks. How many of you are there? There's like 20.
Let me see if we can run through. So the Children's Campaign, Women's Foundation, Governor's Office, we're doing a section, Office of Early Childhood, PVC, ECPD Advisory, we'll be talking about milestones, innovation grants, there's a whole bunch of presentations. So we're going to do kind of a round robin of all sorts of different things happening in the workforce in Colorado. So we're just going to view of that.
Great, yeah.
That's great. There's alignment.
Yeah.
Right, definitely. And you're full, I believe. Yes. All 80 seats are already taken. So, yeah, it's super exciting. We look forward to hearing the outcome of that at our next PQA meeting. Great. Again, questions, comments, concerns? I think everyone also would know how to reach me, and if not, please reach out to Amanda and Christine if you have any questions around workforce or amazing ideas in the middle of the night when you get up to go to the bathroom. Okay, thank you.
Right there.
Oh, I'm going the wrong way.
Hi, y'all. Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Ginsky, Governor's Office. Before starting, one other thought I had about other areas that ECLC could look at, I don't know whether it's a working group or adding it to one of the other activities, I don't know if somebody at PQA could look at it, is this issue of facilities and building space, which is so central to, as we all know, to building capacity in the field. There's a lot going on, and it might be worth, I don't know if it should be its own focus or something to think about.
Thank you.
What I wanted to go over briefly today are some priorities of the Governor's Office related to state budget for next fiscal year, and also some legislative initiatives that'd be great to have your all engagement and focus and support on. So to start with budget, we know that now is the key time at the legislature for the budget. This past Monday, on the 2nd, the Joint Budget Committee, JBC, held its figure setting for the Colorado Department of Education. And one of the top issues that CDE administers, one of the top programs, for early childhood course is the Colorado Preschool program. And the governor has proposed a significant increase in CPP for next fiscal year, $27.6 million increase to add about 6,000 slots. And the JVC postponed consideration of that. I'm not exactly sure of the timing, but it's really important right now for the JVC and the legislature to hear from the early childhood community in Colorado about the importance of expansion. Somewhere, depending on what kind of calculations we use, or the department uses, or however you want to calculate it, somewhere between 35 and 40% of children eligible for CPP are being served by CPP. The program, which has been so successful, it's been around 31 years, has contributed many positive outcomes in the short and long term, and yet 40% or fewer eligible children who have at-risk factors defined in state law, are receiving services. So the governor is really focused in the short term, while we're hoping that we can have all access to quality preschool for all 4-year-olds and increasing access to all children, that in the meantime, we want to get this number up to at least 50%, and that's what this would do in next year's budget. So it's important, if you all have good relationships with state lawmakers and staff, to amplify this point. This is one of our top priorities. And I want to thank the ECLC for their letter of support for the governor's budget proposals that was, I think, sent earlier this week. And also, many of you work closely with the Early Childhood Summit, and I want to thank the summit too for the support of advocates in supporting many of the governor's agenda items in both budget and legislative. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Next Monday, the 9th, the Office of Early Childhood budget will be considered in figure setting by the JVC. So a couple other critical priorities that we are proposing include increased support for the early childhood workforce. And the legislation, House Bill 1053, Representative Sirota's bill, includes a lot of these priorities, and there's a great deal of alignment. We've worked closely with Representative Sirota and the Colorado Children's Campaign to have the bill and the budget connect. And again, the funding that is proposed in the bill and our budget for items like scholarships, really great opportunities, different kinds of recruitment and retention scholarships, apprenticeships, and other types of workforce pathways would be really helpful, those kinds of communications, if you wouldn't mind talking with them. And then also, the other issue is quality improvement. And the governor's budget proposes a good deal of state and federal dollars be directed through the State Department of Human Services and early childhood councils to improve quality rating levels in childcare and preschool, as well as technical assistance and community outreach to improve these levels, and we would love to have that kind of support. So those are some of the items, issues that the JVC will be considering. There are some other issues in the proposals in the governor's budget request that we think are absolutely critical. Improving CCAP payments, and that is another item that's in there, as well as the Part C proposal to keep up with caseload. We hope that these are issues that the JVC understands are just absolutely essential to ensure that young children who, many of them are at risk or who have risk factors, who are under-resourced, need support. And we have a growing caseload in child care and early intervention that need to be addressed. And then home visiting as well. There's about $500,000 that we're proposing in home visiting that we think is just critical. So those are some other areas that we would appreciate any kinds of support you guys could offer in communication. There's been a lot of outreach, and the official support from ECLC and the summit will be really helpful, but the more the better on that. That's the budget at this time. Legislation, some of the bills that we are focused on and involved with are related to the budget items, but not all of them. there is a bill that was just introduced yesterday that relates to family child care license exemptions. These exemptions that are in state law will expire this year unless the legislature takes action. They sunset this summer. So there's a bill that's sponsored by Representative Mary Young that would extend the exemptions, but add as a parental notification component so that parents whose children are in these license exempt programs will hear from their providers that they are exempt, just so they understand that. And we think that's an important provision in that as well. And there's some good data reporting that we think will help quite a bit too in helping the public, the department, providers, parents understand the outcomes or some of the issues that are related to exempt programs. And it's just to help, I think, really understand the scope of what happens there. But we're excited about these kinds of extensions. The governor is, and we know that there are definite legitimate reasons why some family child care programs are exempt from licensing, and it can really help improve the supply. We want to make sure that children are safe and healthy, and that's part of the rationale behind that. A couple other bills that we're looking at is 1016, which is a quality bill sponsored by Representative McCluskey. It passed the House Education Committee about a month ago. It doesn't have a fiscal note because it's now more permissive, and it is still in the Appropriations Committee, but we expect that to move forward. This would allow for council support of quality for level 1 providers across the board, regardless of whether they're experiencing a hardship or not. It would also provide support from the Department of Human Services for this work, and it's aligned with our budget request. And as I mentioned, House Bill 1053 by Representative Sirota also passed the House Education Committee at the same hearing a month ago, and is also in the Appropriations Committee, and the governor's office is in full support of that bill, and just appreciate the great work many of you and others have contributed to these kinds of concepts. Some of the issues we were just hearing from Heather and others about the importance of workforce, we think that the strategies in this bill are really promising. They're research-based, they have a great deal of support, and they've worked well in other states. And then, as I mentioned, the Colorado preschool program will require some kind of legislation because we're proposing to increase slots. Typically, often in the past, CPP increases have been done through the school finance bill, the annual school finance bill, but the exact approach, we're not fully sure how it's going to work out this year, but there's a lot of discussions going on about it. And just want to mention one other bill that the governor is really excited about, and again, want to appreciate a lot of you who have worked through the Senate Bill 63 recommendations, and there's a bill that would prevent homeowners associations from prohibiting family child care homes. We know that's been a barrier, and that family child care homes, as we know, are one of the most important ways to increase supply. It's a type of service that many parents really appreciate and like, and children thrive in them. We want to make sure they're good quality, and we don't think that having some kind of random, I shouldn't say random, but arbitrary prohibitions against family child care homes helps in any way. And so the governor's really appreciative of the sponsors of this bill, Senator Story and others, who have proposed this bill coming out of one of the recommendations out of the Senate Bill 63 report. And that bill is passed the Senate and is scheduled, I believe, in a couple of weeks in the first House committee. So those are some updates on where we're at. There's a lot of other bills that are being considered that relate to early childhood that you probably have heard of, and it's good to just pay attention to all those as we're working through this. But glad to take questions and want your input if you have comments or thoughts. Thanks for your consideration and your support.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, for sure. So, Thank you guys for having me today. I am new to this group. As we mentioned when we went around and introduced ourselves, my name is Lindley Estevez, and I'm the communications manager at the OEC, and I'm rounding on about 4 months in that position. So please don't ask me any really difficult questions. I'm catching on, but there's a lot to learn. So I am excited to be here for the first time to talk with you all today about the update to the Early Learning and Development Guidelines, the ELDGs. I know that this group was really engaged in making those updates. So as Lindsay said, we're here kind of disseminating out on a lot of this work that we've done. And I'm able to kind of close the loop with you all and show you what that work that you did really resulted in. I don't want to take a ton of your time rehashing background information that you may already know, but I did just want to quickly level set and refresh our memory on why this work is here and where it all came from. The update to the ELDGs was funded as part of year 1 of the Preschool Development Grant. The previous version of the ELDGs was refreshed or created in 2011, so there was obviously a lot of room for updates to those. And there were sort of 3 key areas we wanted to realign the ELDGs with, and then also some new and refreshed content that we wanted to add as well. So, you know, obviously given that they had last been updated in 2011, there was just some new literature published in the child development space. So the new version of the ELDGs reflects some of that new literature around brain development, physical development, the importance of play. All those good areas are refreshed and updated here. We also wanted to make sure that they were aligned with the 2015 Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework, as well as the 2020 Colorado Academic Standards. So all of that information is now incorporated into this new version of the guidelines. In addition to that information, there's also a lot of new information around transitions in childhood. So from hospital to home for infants, or from preschool to kindergarten for young children. Those can be really challenging times for children and for families, so there is updated information in this version of the guidelines on that as well. So the first piece that really came out of this work is our print guidelines in both English and Spanish. Quite literally, as I am talking right now, they are being mailed out. And so in those print guidelines, that's really kind of your one-stop shop for all of the comprehensive information, first through 3rd grade or age 8, that exists in the guidelines. And then there's also that section on transitions that I was talking about that's kind of new. So I know this is a little overwhelming to look at, but I think it's actually a really nice layout of exactly what's included in the guidelines when you're looking at that really age-specific information. So that innermost circle that you see is going to be the information birth to 3 years old. The second circle out is representing children 3 to 5 years old, and the third circle out is kindergarten to 3rd grade. And each of those kind of colorful blocks is the section of content that exists. So language development, language and literacy development, physical development, that type of thing. That little gray circle in the bottom is letting us know where that information is coming from. So be it the 2020 Colorado Academic Standards, or the other things that we have aligned that content with. So I know that's a little yikes to look at right off the bat, but once you kind of know what you're looking at in the framework, it's a nice way to understand how the guidelines are laid out, because there is a lot of information in there. So as I said, quite literally, as I am talking to you right now, those books are going in the mail. We had requests from pretty much all of our ECCs across the state to disseminate to their networks, including childcare providers. We also have quite a few copies going to our various partner organizations across the state, libraries, the home visiting programs, and we do also have a somewhat limited amount of books that are going to be held in the Office of Early Childhood. So if you are with a group or representing a group who feels like you may have a large benefit from having some copies of these hard copies of the books, but you're not represented right now, feel free to reach out to me. We don't have a ton to disseminate all over the place, but we can definitely work with you if we've kind of missed an area to make sure that folks have the copies that they need. Is there a place online they're available?
Yes.
right there.
Yep.
And so the next area that we really refreshed as part of this was earlylearningsco.org, which is the web-based platform where all of these guidelines live. So we worked with our vendor network affiliates to do kind of an overall refresh on the website, so new images, cleaned up some content, a little bit easier functionality. But then there were sort of three main areas that were really refreshed on the website that I wanted to just highlight for you in a bit more detail. So the first are the video versions of the guidelines. So these are kind of a high-level overview of all those different, that big circle that you saw, all those different content areas for all those different ages. There's a video that kind of highlights a high level of all of the content that was included in there. So in the English version of the videos, we again worked with Stephen Brackett, who's the lead singer of the Flowbox, if you know that band, that group. And he's fabulous. He's a really great representative of this work. And in the Spanish language version of the videos, we worked with Vanessa Bernal, who's pictured there. She is a longtime Spanish language newscaster in Denver and was really passionate about the work and excited about doing it. And I think she was a really wonderful representative of this work in the Spanish language. So all of those videos exist on the website. And then one thing that I am really excited about, because I think they turned out so cool, was the parent experience videos that we did. So that vendor network affiliates did an exceptional job finding parents and caregivers of children that fell into the different age groups represented by the Early Learning and Development Guidelines, gathering them together and having them talk a bit about their experiences. Amanda, were we able to do the video? So I really wanted to show you a piece of one of those videos because I think it's just really representative of how cool those really turned out.
I have it on mine.
Oh,
yeah.
Hi, I'm Stephen Brackett, bringing you the Colorado Early Learning and Development Guidelines, Caregivers of the World. As you begin your parenting journey, the most important thing for you to remember is that in the same way every child is different, every parent's experience is different as well. The first 4 months can be especially tricky. Lack of sleep, constant eating, and what feels like an endless stream of diaper changes can wear on even the most healthy and but here's the thing. We aren't alone. Let's hear from some parents who know exactly what you're doing. What is it like waking up to a new reality of having your first child or your second? What is that adjustment like?
It hasn't quite hit yet that I'm a mom because I've only been doing it for 2 weeks. So I think really quick network of friends and family to kind of, throw questions to.
I just used my life one way, and you go from I'm Willa to I'm Willa's mom,
Seeing her face and just like my wife, and like, I thought I don't deserve this, but I'm so grateful to how do you create a totally new routine? How do you make that adjustment? Organization, communication. I'll let you tell you about that.
Like she said, if you're super organized, it's doable, and you're able to make sure that everybody's needs are met, and people are generally happy.
I think just getting back into a schedule that's normal for us is helping a lot, and that's kind of our self-care right now.
If you could pass a piece of advice back to yourself about the newborn process, about being pregnant, what would it be?
For me, I'm having to learn to love myself with all the imperfections that come with being a mother.
You can't be the best parents for our kids if we can't take care of ourselves, so seriously,
People have said it's the hardest job you'll ever do as a mom or a dad, and realizing that's accurate.
If you were going to put the joy of this experience, what would that be?
I would have to say exciting.
for a second, and then go straight into a smile. And that makes every hour that I miss anything perspective.
Good, Amanda, you can. So that is obviously the first 2 to 3 month age group. And I think, you know, all of the videos that we did really turned out that great. And my colleague Julie and I were there when they were filming in both English and Spanish. The parent experience videos exist, and it was exceptional. Like, the parents were making connections with each other while they were doing the videos. It was a really wonderful experience. So we're really excited about how those turned out. Another piece that kind of ties to those parent experience videos that's refreshed on the website is this option for parents or caregivers or folks who work with parents and caregivers to be able to share their story through the website. So there's an area where parents can submit or caregivers can submit how they've used the guidelines or just what their experiences have been with an infant or a toddler or a child that's transitioning into kindergarten. And so I think the goal with this and with the parent experience videos too was to have this be more than just like a one-way conversation, and instead have parents and caregivers and those working with them being able to also feed content and information and their experiences back into the website. So we were creating connections and a lot of really meaningful information that could be shared out between people who are going through really similar experiences. Finally, so on the website you can download just, you know, kind of like the PDF version of the books, and it all exists on the website as well. But there's also this really nice new feature to make the guidelines searchable. So if you're familiar with the guidelines, they're kind of a lot. They're really big. There's a lot of information in there. So this is a nice option for folks who are searching for really specific information or information about a specific age group or topic to be able to search that, and it'll pull in each section of the guidelines that specifically discusses that. So for example, if you're looking for information about kindergarten, you're going to find information about the developmental aspects of children who are age kindergarten, that transition into kindergarten, anything that's related to that is going to pop up here. So I think our hope is that this makes them a little bit easier and more usable for folks who are accessing the guidelines online. And then finally, I just wanted to quickly touch on promotion of this work. So obviously we didn't want to go through creating all of this information and then just having it sit there. We are in the midst of creating a toolkit for our partners to be able to share out about all of the work that was done as part of the refresh of the guidelines. So things like social media posting for your print publications, newsletters, however you're communicating with the folks that you want to reach, namely parents, caregivers, and those supporting parents and caregivers, making it really easy for you to just kind of plug and play. And it'll be information about, you know, the guidelines overall, but then pieces to really promote some of those specific pieces of content, like the parent experience videos, the share your story, the searchable guidelines, things like that. And a nice thing about this aspect too is it helps us to sort of put together 2 different pieces of PDG work that we're going on. So in addition to the guidelines, we also worked with our vendor SE2 to create new and refreshed messages for the shared message bank, as well as to test those messages with parents and caregivers. And we have that data back, we have that information back. So the language used in these promotional posts to talk about the ELDGs are perfectly aligned with all of that information. So once again, we're all able to kind of speak with one shared voice to parents and caregivers and those supporting them to talk about this work and this information. So that is all I have for you, but I'm happy to take any questions or clarify anything if you have them.
You might have said this, and I maybe missed it, but when does this new website go live, or is it already?
It is live right now. Thank you, actually, for pointing that out. So it's live right now, but internally we are still doing a little bit of quality checking on the website. So if you run right back to your office after this and hop on and notice anything weird going on, chances are we know that that's going on. So just heads up. But yes, it is available right now. Question online. Yeah. Is your goal with the printed guidelines to have a copy in each licensed provider's hands, or should we initially target those engaging with the work? So it's kind of, so we went through the ECCs to request the copies. So I think they're the ones who are going to distribute out to the childcare providers. So I think really the intention would be to have each of the providers that these ECCs are working with have a copy in hand, but that's sort of on the ECC's part to distribute those and figure out where the most need is. Looking at the numbers that the ECCs requested, it looks like they're really trying to disseminate them
wisely. Sorry.
Early Childhood Councils, or ACCs.
Yes. Sorry. I'm already using the acronyms, and it's been 4 months. All right. Thank you guys so much.
They look great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Juggling meetings this morning, as we always do. We don't have slides, so she made us one.
Oh, you made us a slide. Thank you.
Because she's amazing.
You're amazing. And I can start with passing these around too, if you want to chance. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Christina Walker from Clayton Early Learning and co-convener of Raise Colorado.
And I'm JC Montclair Price with the Colorado Children's Campaign and co-convener of Raise Colorado.
And so many of you might have heard about this before because we've been blasting emails and we talked about it last week at the ECLC full meeting. Can't believe that was already last week. And so we just wanted to give folks another chance to hear about it and ask us questions today. So basically, we at Raise Colorado are partnering with the ECLC, the Office of Early Childhood, the Governor's Office, and through this partnership, we have funding from the National Governors Association to do prenatal to age 3 focused work to inform the governor's prenatal to age 3 policy agenda. And so basically, similar to the process that we did last year with Senate Bill 63, where we had a toolkit and we helped support scholarships for folks in different communities around the state to do listening sessions, we are doing a very similar thing now. So I'll let you talk about the toolkit.
Okay, yeah. I think it's a great opportunity to hear from folks on issues outside of early childhood education and care. You know, we at Raise especially, but all of us know that all of those surrounding factors, the community factors, have an enormous impact on the health and well-being of pregnant people, infants, and toddlers. And so what we're trying to do, and you'll notice that it's pretty similar to what we do with Senate Bill 63, is foster those conversations, get people thinking both about the strengths in their communities. I personally feel this is a really great opportunity to lift up some of those programs that we all work on that are really having a huge impact and that people are depending on for their health and well-being, and to identify concerns. So we separate things into 5 different buckets, trying to get across the issues of family economic security, food and nutrition. Not going to remember all 5 of them,
Health and mental health,
social connections and relationships,
early care and learning.
Okay, we got them all. Our development, right? We want to make sure we get the EI kind of approach there. And then trying to search for solutions. You know, similar to 63 again, the toolkit is there with agendas and kind of walking people through facilitation. We're already getting feedback, and so we may make an update to it that some more specific questions around the issue areas would be helpful. We haven't talked about this yet. Just to get people to understand, like, what do we even mean by social connections and relationships, right? I think since we're in this world so deeply, we know what that means, but regular folks don't. So
it's always helpful to get feedback.
Yes, iterations is how we do everything. So the main challenge I deal with this, great opportunity, is timing. As with so many things that we do, this is a really tight timeline. All of these meetings need to happen and have the feedback back to us by April 6th. So exactly 1 month. The grant ends April 15th. So we are squishing it as much as we can. The toolkit is available online along with the application for financial assistance. And yeah, we hope people can get started. You know, it's again similar to 63. If anyone did those, it can be integrated into a standing meeting that you have, or you can create your own kind of events around it. In terms of target population, it is a wide range, right? We've talked a lot to family childcare home providers and others around Senate Bill 63. So, nurse, home visitor, I mean, anyone you can think of, right, who touches that prenatal infant toddler world is a great audience. We're currently taking support applications on a rolling basis because we know time is of the essence, and if you're going to hold a meeting, you need a confirmation that you have funding to hold it. So definitely get those in as soon as you're able. The scholarships can help support things like childcare, food, renting a space, those types of things, and scholarships can be up to $500 for each community meeting. Feel free to host them, to people that makes the most sense for your community. But just as an example, the two pilot or test conversations that we had that helped to inform the toolkit was with the Colorado Association for Family Childcare Providers was one, and then Motherwise, a project of DU that also is a part of the Thriving Families new nonprofit. We also held a conversation with mothers who had been graduates of Motherwise, and so they were both very interesting conversations and very different, because one was about caregivers and providers that are licensed, and then others were parents and new parents, right, new moms, and that were either juggling several children or just starting the experience, like we heard in the video, of being a mom. And so I think having a mixed community of people would also be a really interesting conversation, because I think you would also get very interesting and different perspectives. But just for example, those are the two folks that we worked with to help support the toolkit creation.
In terms of how this information is going to be used, so you hold your meeting, you collect all this information, you send it to us on our Google form. Then after, it'll be a team, us from RAISE, along with Office of Early Childhood, probably Amanda, ECLC, Amanda, and Office for Early Childhood, probably Kristen Lang, who will look at the data, compile it, and analyze it, and submit it to the governor's office, with those observations and recommendations and best practices. It's not clear to us at this exact moment, and Scott has taken off, whether there's going to be like a formal, here's our prenatal to age 3 plan, or if it's going to be more like, knowing what we know about prenatal to 3, here's this policy we want to work on, if that makes sense. So we'll try to get clarity on that, just so people kind of know how their information is used. And we also plan to follow up with folks afterwards with a copy of whatever kind of report we submit to the governor, so they can also see how their information was used and potentially use it maybe on a sort of local level as well.
Yeah, but basically, we're just really excited to be fostering these conversations similar to the Infant and Family Childcare Strategic Action Plan. Those are conversations that needed to happen like a million years ago, and same with this one, right? And as we're talking about UPK, as we're talking about, birth to 3 or birth to 5, we need to remember that prenatal piece, and we also need to make sure that 0 to 3 piece is really prominent as we think about the implications that UPK could have and how we can mitigate them on the front end.
Happy to answer questions.
We explained it so perfectly.
Well, you know how to find us if you need to, and you know where to find the toolkit. Even if you don't want to apply for funding, but have the opportunity to hold this even informally, at a team meeting or something, I think the more information we can get, the better off we are always, right, in terms of what we can tell the governor needs to happen.
So I may have just seen this, but can you clarify the money, so if I'm applying for funds, that also has to be completed by April 5th?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And then the receipts submitted by April 15th. We need to commit all the money by then. So, yes, tomorrow, yesterday is when actually it needs to be done.
How else would we do this? Come on.
Yeah, done one of these online, because I'm thinking that might be a little bit easier way to collect information given.
Yeah, we did one.
We did Zoom at
with
first.
Senate 63,
yeah.
We did a Zoom one, and I have a couple of things set up that people could hold their own. We are in a daze and haven't had a chance to talk about that. Maybe after Speak Up next week, we can figure that out. But it is a great idea, right? So many people, and especially if we could do it Zoom at 7:30 on a weeknight or something, would probably get a lot different array of people.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is to know that we're available for help and assistance. If you have questions about the agenda, if you have questions about how to hold a Zoom meeting, we can answer those questions. because we know that it can be a little difficult for folks who haven't used the technology before, or use whatever technology you have that you think would be best. But that's why we're also fostering like the local community meetings, because then that way it's not like everyone has to come to Denver to have the conversation. It's like, have the conversation in your local community and have it on a Saturday and have childcare, buy people some food, and have it be like a really good like communal conversation. So yeah, but we're also available for technical assistance if folks need it.
And I just want to share an anecdote because it really shows the power that the Senate Bill 63 conversations had. Some of you may know that Pitkin County last year approved 12 weeks, 100% paid family medical leave paid family leave, for their employees. And through the grapevine, we've been told that while it wasn't the only factor, the fact that the conversation Shirley Ritter hosted up there was attended by nearly all of the county commissioners really got them talking and understanding prenatal infant toddler issues a little bit better. So we can't take all the credit. We might not be able to take any credit, but I think it's really interesting, right, that strong policy, and it was even, I think, the amendment to that bill, opposite of what you'd expect, strengthened it. It increased the percentage of pay rather than what we are seeing maybe at the Capitol where things are decreasing. So, if that can happen in Pitkin County, it can happen anywhere in the state, maybe.
But I think that's the other thing is like for folks who want this data, like this is an easy way for you to start gathering some of that data to use for your own local advocacy, because we know that so much happens at the local level too. So having that data, having that qualitative those quotes from parents, from caregivers, is so meaningful. And you might make connections with folks who would be interested in becoming more part of the policy and advocacy world, and that's always a help to be able to take a family from their county or their jurisdiction up and to talk about the issues that matter to them. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can think about the opportunity based on your role and your community. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Anita.
Thanks to everyone. Wonderful presentations. Do we have public comments? Did anyone sign up for it, or does anyone have anything? And then that'll be followed by any member comments. You have?
Yeah. I'll just come closer to this one. Liz Houston, formerly with ECLC, now with the National Wildlife Federation. Asked that I share updates around the ECHO program, the Early Childhood Health Outdoors work that they're doing. They have 2 applications out right now. One is around licensed childcare and preschools to apply for funding for improvements to their outdoor space and making their outdoor spaces more natural, nature-based. And then the second one is a cohort that they're doing around family childcare providers to receive a micro grant and participate in a certificate program to develop their own space at their family childcare outside that. So 2 super cool opportunities. We'll send around the links for those, but I wanted to share those on her behalf.
Wonderful. That's great to have interest carry over to improving that. Any member comments, either through the webinar, online, or here? Anything you want to share? Any other comments? No?
Well, I can share a couple of announcements.
Okay.
My other part is this is campaign.
Thank you.
We are having Speak Up for Kids Day at the Capitol next week, the 12th. As you know, that's hosted by the Children's Campaign, Clayton Early Learning, and Children's Hospital Colorado. It is full. We anticipate some dropouts, but there's always next year. Next year will be our 10th annual event. Also, wanted to let people know that we anticipate releasing the Kids Count 2020 report on March 19th. And so that'll be available online and in print. And this year's kind of essay and narrative focuses on universal preschool. So very relevant to the work that we'll probably be doing over the next year, 2 years, however many years. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. So anyone else? Thanks so much. I think we had a great discussion about, topics for future meetings, so I don't think we need to talk about it here. If you think of any other suggestions, please send them to Christina. And with that, anything else, Christina or Amanda? All right, thank you. We're adjourned. Thanks to everyone for coming today and for joining us online.
Thank you.
How are you?